It's Tuesday, September 11th, primary day, and the polls are open in New York City. As Hurricane Erin remains well offshore, we'll have sunshine today. The Giants lose their opener in Monday Night Football.
It's 8:52 here in New York. I'm Bryant Gumbel. We understand that there has been a plane crash on the southern tip of Manhattan. You're looking at the World Trade Center. We understand that a plane has crashed into the World Trade Center. We don't know anything.
Another one just hit the building. Wow. Another one hit it hard. Another one just hit the World Trade.
Hung up, but he said a new explosion just happened at 2 World Trade Center.
Right now, you got people running up the street.
Okay.
I'll tell you what's going on.
Okay, all units responding over to the Pentagon. You need to be careful. Possible terrorist attack.
Oh my goodness. We're looking at a live picture from Washington, and there is smoke pouring out of the Pentagon.
United 9-3, have you got information on that yet?
Yeah, he's down.
He's down?
Yes.
When did he land?
He did not land.
Airplanes in Washington. There is a large fire at the Pentagon. The Pentagon has been evacuated. And there, as you can see, perhaps the second tower, the front tower, the top portion of which is collapsing. Good Lord. There are no words.
What'd you see?
Everything. I saw chaos. It's just chaos out here. It really is. So the Twin Towers fall. It's amazing. It's crazy.
My name is Gentene, and I am the principal at Mason Middle School. And when I think back to September 11th, 2001, it's kind of funny to be filming this as the middle school principal, because I was an 8th grader here at Mason Middle School. It was across the street at what is now the Mason Elementary campus. But I was sitting as an 8th grade student on September 11th, 2001 at the middle school. And in fact, one of my classmates, her family was directly impacted by the September 11th attacks, with her mother tragically passing away. And so when I think back to just how profound that experience was, I think back to those relationships that were forged, and seeing not just our community but the world really rally around what it meant to be there for each other, and these just strong feelings of affection, and how do we support one another, and how do we love people well. And I think back to those 8th grade teachers are some of the closest teachers that I have in my life. Many of them have since moved on from Mason Middle School, but they've not moved on from my life. I keep in touch with a lot of them even to this day. And so when I reflect on what September 11th means to me, there are so many lessons that I've taken from it, and ways in which my life was impacted and my classmates' lives were impacted. But I really come back to just the importance of meaningful relationships and showing up for one another when things get hard.
I'm David Charpentier, the father of 4 Mason Comets, 2 who have recently graduated, an 8th grader and a 6th grader. I'm also the former commander of Joe Barr American Legion Post 194 in Mason, Ohio. As a recently transitioned Army officer, I was working in Blue Ash for a company and was in a staff meeting. And somebody interrupted our staff meeting, and we walked out and turned on the television, and I saw the images on 9/11. I was glued to those images, and my mind was racing about what would take place. I was wondering if I would get called back onto active duty. I remember leaving work early that day. My parents were traveling abroad, and I remember getting in touch with my mom and breaking down, tears flowing, just thinking about the loss of life and how our lives would be changed based on the actions of that day. 9/11 has continued to impact me for the last 20 years as I've watched my fellow veterans, those that I served with, and a whole new generation answer the call to help defend America. It's also been very difficult as I see the physical and mental toll that it's taken on our nation's military. I continue to work with veteran organizations that help those who have served and are transitioning back into civilian life. The lesson I take away from 9/11, and really a lesson that I've learned over the last 20 years, is that change starts with me and change starts in my community. Those that I can influence by being a positive impact and positive role model, by making a difference in the lives that are close to me. Thank you.
Tonya McCall. I am currently the Chief Talent Officer at Mason City Schools in the Human Resources Department. But on 9/11, I was the Mason Middle School principal. And things I remember about that day is I remember mostly that it felt surreal. It felt, I remember someone coming into my office and saying, turn the television on. And so I turned the television on and I could see, at that time, the first tower had fallen. And they were talking about the second tower. And I just remember watching, thinking that this can't possibly be happening, but at the same time recognizing that this is New York City and thinking about the people that I knew that lived in New York at the time. I also remember that I was a brand new principal. I will never forget that because also I will tell you that as being brand new, you don't know what you don't know. And so I remember thinking that, well, I will say that I know that I didn't handle that as well as I could have because I was living in that moment with people. And that can be a good thing and it can be a bad thing. And so when you're young and you're brand new at something and you don't necessarily know how to do that well, sometimes you get stuck in those moments. And the moments for 9/11 for me were very chaotic. I remember staff being very upset. I remember kids being upset. I remember our phone ringing off the hook because parents wanted to come and pick up their children. And there was just a lot of unknowns at the time. The impact of that day initially was just profound because it was something that was happening in the world. So it was happening to all of us at the same time. But it very quickly became a personal event. We learned shortly, and I don't remember if it was that day or the very next day, that one of our own students, Ashley Faulkner, her mother, Wendy, was working in the World Trade Center that day. And so it became then even more personal. And I remember our staff trying to figure out, what do we do? How do we support this student, a person that's in our building? And it was very difficult because everyone was trying to come to grips with what happened. And so again, it became a very personal experience very quickly, not just a community experience. I would say that for another impact for me was, I'd like to think that event helped me become a better leader, because I learned very quickly what not to do. Sometimes you don't know what to do, but through experience, you learn what not to do. I learned that I needed to be a strong leader for the group. I needed to be able to show strength in crises and to be able to show compassion, all while still being vulnerable to the experience and helping to let people know it's okay that something hurts. We just have to figure out how to move ourselves from point A to point B so that we're continuing to grow together. And so that was a really important thing for me. And I'd like to think that as a result, I'm a better leader because of that. In terms of lessons learned for us as a community, I think there's a lot of lessons we could have learned, and I would have hoped that we would have learned that the actions of a small group of people should not be that group as a whole should not be penalized for that. That's something that I saw 20 years ago, and it's hard to believe that was 20 years ago, that we are still trying to figure out today. We're still trying to figure out how to not lay the blame of a small group on the whole of society. So I'm hoping and I'm hopeful that we'll get that right one day, and that we'll all be better because of it.
Hello, Mason City Schools. My name is Adam Clark. I'm from the class of 2001. On 9/11, I was in my dorm room getting ready to go to my first class of the day, and we had the news on, and there was a story about one of the towers having a plane run into it, and it started to catch our attention as we started to watch a little bit more. And we watched that second airplane crash into the tower. We all realized, and it was later to be confirmed, that this was a terrorist attack on our country. And as we watched the towers fall that day, and just realized the magnitude of all the lives that were lost in that one day, and what impact those days had, and what we still see today. We still see remnants of that. Good example is just going to the airport and all the security measures that are necessary there. That all stems from 9/11. But in 2005, I joined the U.S. military. I became a Green Beret Ranger. I spent time as a sniper. I had a specialty in communications, learned how to speak Arabic. I ended up going to Iraq, being deployed to Iraq. Most of the time, I was spent most of my time up in northern Iraq, but went to some other countries in the region as well. And we did a lot of foreign internal defense missions as well, helping other countries stand up their armies and stand up their intel operations, if you will. But in traveling, not necessarily traveling the world, but being part of a all-volunteer force in the U.S. military really showed me how powerful we are as an individual army. You can have all the technology in the world, but if you don't have the spirit, if you don't have free will, which we do have in America, if you don't have freedom to make that decision to serve your country, whether you want to or not, that's besides the point. But being in an all-volunteer force and seeing many, many people from all walks of life come into the military, different races, different creeds, different religions, all coming together for one mission, and that mission was to take out terrorists. And though that's turned into a much more global affair and has continued on to this day, even as we pull out of Afghanistan, I think one of the most beautiful things that I really found a lot of appreciation for was that America is a beautiful place, even with all its scars and all the things that are politicized or talked about in the news today. I mean, this is a free country, and it's really beautiful to be a part of, and to kind of go outside the bounds and go to other countries and just see how difficult it is to be an individual, or how difficult it is for children to grow up in a world where there's not war. I remember watching a young boy, maybe 5 years old, selling gasoline on the side of the highway, and out of 2-liter bottles, and just really images like that have stuck with me over the years. And I have great appreciation for everyone in my life who supported me through that, and have thanked me for my service. And it's really me thanking them, giving me the opportunity to live in such a beautiful country that I can volunteer to serve and stand next to other volunteers. I think that's a very powerful thing. And Mason in itself is a beautiful place. We have a very diverse culture in Mason, and I think it's really a shining example for all of America. Really, I mean, it's not perfect, but pretty dang close. But anyways, that's my story. I hope you guys enjoy it. I hope you have a wonderful day, and just take a moment to think about 9/11 and what it might mean to you, being so far removed from it. So, thank you.
Hello, my name is Shabana Shakir, and I am the mother of 3 adult children who all attended Mason schools. I'm currently on the board of the Islamic Center of Greater Cincinnati, as well as leading the Tours and Talks program. I'm also a founder of a giving charity right here in Mason, whose mission is to give back to the people we live and work with every day. On 9/11, I remember driving my daughter to preschool at the Islamic Center. And I remember coming home, like so many of us, to turn on the television and see that horrific sight of the Twin Towers coming down. I was really afraid, like all of us, and most importantly, very uncertain of the future. What made things really difficult was receiving a call from the Islamic Center to come pick up my daughter early from preschool, as well as canceling school the next day. So you can imagine what it was like trying to explain to a preschooler why her school was canceled, and why people believed that the religion that she practices was responsible for all this. This greatly impacted me. I have an MBA from Xavier University, and my goal was to go back and work in the corporate world. But instead, I decided to spend the next 20 years not just combating Islamophobia, but combating all hate towards all groups of people. And I encourage you, Mason students, to please continue being kind, continue being empathetic, and focus on diversity. That is the key to, I think, all our problems, and I hope that we have a brighter future. Thank you so much, and peace be upon you.
My name is Steve Mays, and I've been teaching at Mason City Schools since 1996. On 9/11, I remember being outside, teaching a class lesson outside that day, and I was coming back in from teaching that class, and one of the other teachers came up to me and said, "Hey, we're under attack." And I didn't understand what he was telling me, so he kind of explained it a little bit, and I went into the classroom and we turned on our television and we saw what was happening. And it was hard, it was heavy. A little bit later on that day, we found out that one of my students at the time, her name was Ashley, she said that her mom was in New York that day and was at the World Trade Center. And come to find out that her mom lost her life that day in the attacks. And that was heartbreaking. My heart just went out to her and I cried. It was difficult. Later on that day, once we were dismissed from school, I went home and my son at the time was less than a year old, and the only thing I could do was just hug him and just hold on to him. And my wife and I watched as things unfolded the rest of that day, and it was difficult, very, very difficult. But what I take away from that more than anything else is that time is precious. Time spent with my family, time spent with my loved ones, time spent with my friends is precious. And so we need to hold on to that as best we can, remember those times, and make sure that we do everything that we can to make those times with our family, those times with our loved ones, as positive and uplifting and as encouraging as possible. The last thing I would say about 9/11 that I learned was that even though our country has difficulties, even though the United States is not perfect, I can definitely say that it's still, in my opinion, the greatest country on the face of the planet. And I know that I'm going to do everything that I can to strengthen my family, strengthen my community, and strengthen our country, and do everything that we can to try to bring people closer together, to work together for positivity and encouragement, as opposed to trying to tear people apart and spread hatred. So hopefully this encourages you a little bit. And even though it was a very difficult time at that time, we shouldn't, and it's something that we should never forget. I can definitely say that it's something that has inspired me to try to make this world a better place.